So what we are looking at here, this was created by the man himself, Master Breeder Dean, who is now a contractor with Aquarium Co-op, and this is where I've originally saw this system from. So Dean is the creator of this. I've just honed it down to fit my needs, and that's what I have tried to say in most of my videos where we focus on a DIY project or some nature of that, is I want you to be able to take specific parts and pieces of what I show you and then apply it to fit your needs. But I wanted to do this my way while taking, Dean's core value of it, but creating this system to be what I need it to be. So this is his fry raising system. I don't even know what to call it. I teased this on the community tab. We talked about this. So I'm going to kind of take you through a step-by-step process of how I put this together, and we're going to finalize this system and actually get it running tonight. And it's a good thing too, because I've got some fry and my egg tumblers that are ready to move over, and this is going to be the perfect time to get this thing going, as I think I even have other females holding eggs in the fish room, so we're definitely going to have things moving through here. So I've got the main basis of this set up, but I left one tray off so we can finalize that one together and walk you through my process of building the best fry system I've ever seen. So let's start off with why I built this. So now as I moved really into a very focused breeding fish room, the first time I saw this was a couple years ago, even before I was really into breeding fish. So the reason I built this is to move away from using things like this. So this is the Marina Hang-On Breeder Box. This was in use on this tank about 2 days ago. But I just needed something, and this works. This absolutely works. But I wanted to do something better, in my opinion, and it's going to eliminate that, where I can focalize and centralize this. Now I understand not everybody has the room to make one of these, so those breeder boxes, even the, we've looked at these briefly, the new Zis breeder box, and this one's definitely dirty and algae covered because I was using this not too long ago. I'm not gonna go shy away from breeder box. This just focalizes my needs into one tank. So it's gonna be much easier to maintain, in my opinion, feed the fry, watch the fry. So starting off with, this is just a regular 20-gallon tank from Petco. 20-gallon long, and it's a nice 30 inches long, it's 12 inches front to back, which allows me and allows anybody to find what tray system they want to use on this. Now I have mine drilled for auto water change, so I'm not worried about the water quality, but then I also have a Fluval internal filter acting as the biological filtration for the entire tank itself. I'm not a total fan of that Fluval. I had it on another tank, but I moved it down to this tank because I'm switching things around. So I would recommend having something in here for biological filtration, whether that be sponge filters, hang in the back filters, canister filter, internal filter, whatever you want to do, because you are going to be producing waste throughout this tank, obviously. So from there, select your tray system. Now I was able to find some at Target that's about, I was thinking like 4 inches tall. Do I have a tape measure in here? I do have a tape measure in here. So it's just about 4 inches tall. I know these are about 10 inches front to back, 10.5 inches front to back. And then it's like 7 inches wide, just about 7 inches wide. So there are smaller versions of this you can get. There's bigger versions of this you can get. So I opted for 4 of kind of the medium-sized ones, and that's honestly, I found these locally at Target, and that's what they had in stock. There is one that's half as wide, but they are not in stock anywhere in the Valley. I know there's a couple options on Amazon you can find of these. So if you're gonna look for these online, these are called a kitchen organizer. That's how I found these. Now I specifically chose this one because it has the front handle that you can pull out on here, and then it just fit my needs from there. So building this, really simple. There are some areas that you can adapt to what you need. So starting off with selecting my tray, I taped off the top half with painter's tape and spray painted the bottom half. Now the key to this is I used the Krylon Fusion spray paint. That's a very specific spray paint that I've been able only to find at Lowe's locally. You may be able to find it online somewhere. So after I taped it, painted it, you let it cure for 24 hours. This Krylon Fusion becomes, we're gonna say, water resistant. Over time it's gonna flake, it's gonna chip. But I wanna say 4 coats of paint. Sprayed it, let it dry for like 30 minutes to an hour, sprayed it again, repeated the process until you get the coverage you want. Now, obviously my paint job wasn't the best, or my tape job wasn't the best, because I did get some bleed over, not too concerned about it. But I opted for white, following Dean's recommendation, as it allows me to see the fry when they're actually in the tray. So, fry are gonna be dark, I can see them, and then from there we continue to adapt it to what we need. So this being 10 inches long, the tank is 12 inches long, or front to back. I needed something for this to rest on the back of the tank. For me, I recommend a 3-inch stainless steel bolt, or screw, whatever you want to call it. These do not need to be big. So I found these at, again, Home Depot, Lowe's, local hardware store. I opted for 3 inches because when it actually sits on the tank, there's a little bit of hangover in the back, so I feel more comfortable having that there and more stable in my opinion. Now, I drilled a couple holes in the back of it, just with the drill bit. You can see I kind of messed up on this tray, but that's fine. And I try to make them as level as possible. Now from there, I originally tried to use a nut that has this nylon in it or something, so it actually like sealed to the bolt. Now we're gonna call user error on this one, because for the life of me, I cannot get this thing on. So I just opted for a regular stainless steel nut on the back of this, so that way it just secures it to the tray. If you're worried about it, put a little bit of silicone over this, even some super glue, but I purposely use stainless steel so it should not rust, but I'll definitely watch it over time. And I say though, if you're concerned about it, throw a little bit of super glue on the ends of it or a little bit of silicone, let that cure, and you'll be fine from there. Now, here's the genius part of this system, right? Is when these are on the tank, water's gonna flow into them, and you need it to flow back out down into the main tank. So we cut some holes on the back of the trays here. Now, I recommend that when you cut these, you definitely need to watch where you're cutting this at. This doesn't have to be a perfect hole. You want this hole to be high enough on the back of the tray that it's going to allow a good water level inside the tray, but not so high enough, like not so high that you're interfering with the overall stability and just the way the system's going to work. So I would go err on the caution of going higher than lower, because if you cut it way down here in the bottom of the tray, that's not very much water volume actually in the tray. I used a Dremel tool. I put some painter's tape over it, kind of etched out with the permanent marker, sketched out where I wanted my hole to be. Now the Dremel tool is what I found to be the easiest and the fastest to cut through the plastic. I did find that you can use things like tin snips to cut through this. This is not going to be as a clean of a cut. So you could drill with the drill bit, make a couple holes, get your snips in there and kind of work around it, use some sandpaper and a razor blade to kind of clean up your cuts. But the Dremel tool was absolutely the fastest to buzz through this thing. If you're going to use a Dremel tool, wear eye protection, and if you're not an adult, have adult supervision around, because you are definitely using a power tool and you can nick yourself with it fairly quick. So Dremel tool is what I used. But now with this, when this rests in the tank and water's flowing in, that's a perfect escape route for fry, right? They're gonna escape down into the tank. You may mix it with other fish, you don't want to. So this is where you need some sponge or foam, whatever you're gonna use to block the back of this. So I am using some coarse sponge from Aquarium Co-op, and what I found, this is actually the small pre-filter. It's like their intake filter for hanging the back filters, canister filters. This is the smallest size I could buy. What I found is it is the perfect size and just perfect width that I just cut into it on the side, so it little snips on both sides of this. This is gonna feed right into the back of this, right into this hole, and with the slits we made on either side, it's just gonna hug the tray perfectly. Now, like I said, you can buy foam, sponge, whatever you want to call it, from Petco, PetSmart, tear apart an old sponge filter, whatever you have on hand. And that's what I found. I had these on hand, but it fit perfectly into the holes we cut here. Let me get a measurement on that hole, because I didn't really measure, I just kind of guessed. So we're honestly, so this is roughly 2.5 inches long by 1 inch tall, is what worked for this. And I say this small intake sponge just fits perfectly into this tray, into that hole we cut. You just put a slit on either end and it just hugs it. Now that's gonna stop fry from swimming out the back of this, but allow water to continuously overflow from this. And with the coarse sponge, I'm not gonna have to clean this out nearly as often as you would a fine sponge. We're gonna be feeding things like crushed up flake food, baby brine shrimp, so very small particles of food, but this will allow all that to pass through, get picked up by the main filtration. We're not gonna have to worry about that part. That is the tray in a nutshell. That's kind of how we put this together. It's fairly simple, it's fairly cheap. And now we're gonna move on to actually the water system, how we're gonna move water through this, and then how I tapped in for air on this. So the starting point for the water system, and what makes this system so genius, is it's a recirculating water that's gonna be going into the tray, down to the main tank, getting filtered and pushed back up. So it's a circulating water system. Now, I am a huge fan of the push connect fittings, the RO push connect fittings, because they are so simple to use. My entire fish room is on auto water change using this system. It's not the most inexpensive, because these fittings can be fairly expensive depending on where you buy from. I like to buy from Bulk Reef Supply just because I know the quality of these is very well. I've purchased some from Amazon. The quality is just not what I'm looking for. And I've also bought things from eBay. So I've bought all three. Bulk Reef Supply is my favorite. If you're out of the US, check out eBay. You can find these RO push connect fittings. It's 1/4 inch is what I recommend, what I use. And these can handle a lot of pressure. Now the tubing for it, I like black. You can buy all different colors. It's fairly flexible, it's fairly rigid, and it's easy to work with because it's literally just a push connect and it's in. I've never had one of these fittings leak, and I've been using these for going on 5 years now. So, they are perfect for this. So the reason I also chose this location for this is the wire on these shelves allowed me to zip tie this up to it perfectly without any issues, and then I can run my line from there and down to it. Now, for selecting a pump to run water through your system, you have many different options here. And the reason it will make sense here why I like this RO tubing so much, when you select a pump, you can use something like a MaxiJet power head, an Aquatop power head. There's all just any pump that's gonna move water at the ratio you want it to. And you don't need, thousands of gallons running through this, so it can be a fairly inexpensive pump. You adapting down from like a 1/2 inch tube to the 1/4 inch RO tubing can be a little complicated. So you can use things like PVC pipe, right? Run PVC pipe from the pump up to the top. And I think things like the Zis air valve or even the nickel plated metal air valve, I think you could get those to seat tight enough that you wouldn't have any leaks happening and that could work for you. Now, it all depends on how you're gonna connect to the pump. The other idea I had for this was using something like a drip system that you can buy at the local hardware stores. They have the drip emitters, the drip tubing, and I think you could adapt that fairly easily for most pumps that you're gonna run that, and then it's fairly easy to tap into. That's it. For me, I'm going the RO tubing route, and the pump I selected is actually one I had on hand from another project that ended up not working out. So I found a Mighty Jet pump. This is by Innovative Marine. So it is geared towards the reefing side of things, but this is gonna work perfectly for what I wanna do with this. Now, this is way overkill and way more expensive than you need to spend for yours. This is about an $80 pump, but it's, like I say, I bought it for another tank. It didn't work out. I had it laying around. I was past my return date, so I was like, I'm gonna use this for this because it's a perfect fit. This is a DC controlled pump. What does that mean? That means there's a controller with this pump that's going to allow me to adjust the flow rate. So this pump will move maximum 326 gallons an hour, which is way more turnover than I need for this thing. So I can turn it all the way down though and get enough flow for this, but still have that flexibility of control. So I say, you don't need to use this pump. If you're interested in this, I bought this from Bulk Reef Supply again. Innovative Marine, Mighty Jet pump. It's a slick little pump. But here's why I like it so much. The threaded fittings on the pump are 3/4 inch thread. They make these RO tubing connectors for hose adapters with that 3/4 inch thread. So I'm able to screw this on directly to the pump and then directly connect my RO tubing to this, and now I'm pumping water straight through this, which in my opinion is the easiest way to set this up. The other awesome thing about this is it comes with a bunch of barbed adapters. So this is where I say I think you could use something like drip emitters or drip systems from hardware stores for gardens and that nature to really allow you to adapt to this so well. Now on the intake, I threw a barbed adapter on here, and this is the reason why. In the case of debris, in the case of a fry getting loose, something that I don't want sucked up by this pump, again, a small intake pre-filter from Aquarium Co-op fits perfectly over this barbed adapter. So now I protected the intake from debris. It's coarse. I'm not going to have to rely on cleaning this a bunch. I can directly adapt to my RO tubing, which I have run up underneath the shelf here. But now there's another step I want to take to actually getting water into the actual trays, and I want to show you that now. So on Dean's system, he used an acrylic tube, an acrylic rod, and even some, it's also called, what do you call it? Rigid airline tubing. So again, depending on where you can find it, I found mine off Bulk Reef Supply. I'm hoping the camera's picking that up because that's kind of a, again, it's a clear 1/4 inch acrylic tubing that I bought from Bulk Reef Supply because these are designed to be used in dosing systems. So what's slick about this tubing, this acrylic tubing, is it matches perfectly with these RO connections. It seats perfectly, it connects, there's no issues with it. That's one reason why I like this so much, is how adaptable this is. And this is actually how we're going to drip water into the trays. Is we're gonna connect this to the fittings I've run up underneath here and down into the tray. Now for fine tuning, I have some leftover needle valves that I have from additional water change systems and different projects. So if I can't control the flow enough with the DC pump, and even if you were using a small power head and still wanted to adjust the flow down, they make 1/4 inch ball valves for these systems, which I have on the rest of my auto water change here in the fish room. But because I want this to be a fine-tuned process, I put on these needle valves that will really allow me to really fine-tune the flow into each tray. Now Dean had a genius idea though. Instead of just have these run straight into the tray, and you could use RO tubing for this matter, you could use airline, however you're going to adapt this, it does not need to be this fancy. But I'm going to show you what I did. You can use, so Dean had it to where it's kind of like an L. So instead of straight in, it has a nice little curve to it to adjust some of that flow so it's not as harsh coming in. So I found using a simple lighter, you can actually heat this up and bend it. Now, I'm wearing protective gloves, and again, if you are not an adult, please do this under adult supervision because you are using an open flame. So if you use a bunch of hairspray, be careful. So we're gonna take this, we're gonna run the flame right over this just for a little bit. Back and forth, I'm not sitting in one spot because you will burn this. You do this in a ventilated area, don't make yourself sick. Just back and forth. It takes a minute, but you're gonna see it. It's probably gonna be impossible to see on camera, but you will actually see the tubing start to bend. Once you get it to, there's kind of a fine system here without making this bubble, so it's starting to bend. That's where you're gonna, and be careful, it's gonna be extremely hot. Bend it to the shape you want. So I'm literally just gonna bend this to the shape I want. We have not compromised the tubing, but it still allows air to go through it. But it's just a nice, slick little L now that's gonna drop water into this. Like I say, this connects so perfectly into these fittings that I have the same T-fitting up underneath here that I'm just gonna pop that into it, and it's gonna run perfectly and directly into that last tray. All right, thank you for sticking around with me on this one. This is gonna be definitely a long video, but I wanted this to be a very step-by-step process to show you how I built this. So now we're gonna connect up one final thing before we get the pump running and finish this video up, and that's gonna be the air system. Now what I've done here is Dean was very genius again in using the rigid airline tubing and zip ties that have the screw adapter to it, to running a slick airline in there. And the reason that he runs air is just to break up any oil film that builds, and, you know, that film that builds up on top of the surface of water when it's kind of stagnant. Yes, there's water coming in, but I do believe there's definite benefits in running air into tanks. So for this, I have some airline tubing. This is the Aquarium Co-op airline tubing. You can see my review I've done on this. And we have a Zis air stone, the Never Clog air stone. You can also see the review I've done on these. Now what I've done here is I've tapped into the main airline system I have in the fish room, and I have it to where I can run this airline tubing perfectly up underneath, or up and over the lights that I'm using in here. And these are LED shop lights, and it's not going to be hot. Up and over that, and then connect right into the Zis air valve I have connected to the PVC pipe. Now what that's going to allow me to do is these, and I'll include the last tray here in just a minute, but that will allow me to drop this air stone right into the corner of these trays. So I can put that air stone right into the corner of this, and it's going to kind of hang out in the back of the tray, but it's just with the way I can control these air stones is I can make it a really fine bubble, a really large bubble, so that it kind of keeps it out of the way. Because if I ever want to move the air stone out, I can literally just move it over to another tray. I can drop it in the tank. And if I want to move the water over too, like, there's so much flexibility with that air system. So again, it's just run up over my light, drops down into the tray, and it fits perfectly for that. So again, this is the way I designed this fry system, but I think it's just such a beneficial one to use on this. So it's fairly inexpensive. Gathering material initially will be kind of expensive up front. Fortunately, if you just kind of gather it over time, each tray cost me like $8. I know each pre-filter sponge cost me like, I think like $2, $3. I say the screws and the nuts and all that was like $5. Then you get into things like spray paint, which was $10, and then the RO fittings. That, depending on how big you're going to make this, how many you're going to use, what you buy in bulk and not bulk, you may be looking at $20, $30 there. The pump you're going to use, I say pump I'm using was like $80, but I had it on hand from another project. So you can adapt this into whatever you need this to be. But this is overall the best fry system that I have ever, hands down, seen. And I'm very excited to now have this incorporated into my fish room, as I think this is going to be so beneficial in making this work. So to wrap up this video, we're going to move some fry over from some of the egg tumblers to one of these trays, and we'll finish off this video then. So getting a tray ready for fry is really simple, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. So I've got some moss here that I'm going to add to the tray. This is the Weeping Willow moss that I got from H2O Aquarium Services, Jared. Fish room tour was awesome, link that. So I'm going to place this right into the tray. what this is going to do is just add a little bit of cover for some fry. If I had things like plecos in here, I may add a little piece of wood. But for now, what I'm going to be moving in here is going to be some Egyptian mouth brooder fry that's just ready to come out of the egg tumbler. And that's going to be it, right? I'm just going to add a little bit of moss in there. Just kind of add some cover, some different things like that I said. And then I'm going to get the fry ready. So the fry we're going to be adding is total of, was that 40 fry going into one tray. That's why I'm actually okay with these larger trays, is that I can do that. I can add more fry to a tray that I other systems can. Now you can add whatever fish you want to these trays. I know Dean does like angelfish fry, German blue ram fry, black ram fry, auto fry, pleco fry. You could put guppy fry in here, Endler fry. I mean, anything you want to can go in here. This is just a nice system to collect and keep all of the baby fish in one spot. So let's go ahead and get the fish actually moved over here. So you have some options from here. So I'm just gonna pour them from the tumbler with a little bit of methylene blue into the tray. And because it has an overflow in the back, it's not gonna hurt anything. And then through water changes and all that, the little bit of methylene blue will get moved out of there. If you're concerned about it, a turkey base would work. But for this, I'm just gonna take this right over to the tray. And we're just gonna add the fry directly to this. Whatever's stuck in there, I'll just kind of dip the tumbler in and make sure we get all the fry out. That's it. That's as simple as that of how I'm going to add fry into one of these trays. And in the future, I've got 3 more trays begging for fry to get in there. Yes, I'm very, very excited to have these fry officially in the system. So there we have it. System is running, system is live. This little pump is awesome. The way I was able to connect this with RO tubing, mount the controller, turn it down, it's just working right now. So I'm very, very excited to have this in the fish room. And I did some extensive testing already beforehand on using that size hole, that pre-filter sponge is the sponge, and everything else. And everything is so in sync right now. It's working very well. So please leave me a comment down below. Let me know. Have you used one of these systems? Are you interested in trying one of these systems? And did this video in particular help you or give you the confidence to build one of these? So again, when I posted this on the community tab, we got a lot of good feedback of people that wanted to try these. And I hope this build, this tutorial helps many of you with your breeding projects. So guys, on your way out, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, because over 70% of you that watch the channel are not subscribed. But guys, thank you so much for the support. Keep your tanks well done, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one.